The grand halls of Oran City glowed with silver light from the twin moons above. The Iran council chamber was silent, except for the sound of footsteps echoing on polished stone. Mira walked between two guards, her head held high though her heart was heavy. She was a commander in the Iran fleet, a woman known for discipline and strength. Yet now she stood accused of disobedience against the council. Around her the chamber rose like a cathedral of glass and steel. The counselors sat in a high semicircle above her, each one wearing long white robes with crystal emblems that shimmered faintly. The air was cold, almost lifeless, and the scent of ozone from the glowing walls filled her lungs. One of the counselors, a tall figure named Saran, spoke first. His voice was calm and emotionless. "Commander Mira of the 8th Division, you are charged with defying the order of the Council during the relocation of human workers. You questioned the judgment of your superiors and delayed the operation for several hours. Do you deny this act?" Mira raised her eyes to meet his. "I do not deny it," she said firmly. But the humans were exhausted. They had not eaten in 2 days. They are not machines. They needed rest. A murmur spread through the chamber. Another counselor leaned forward. "Your sympathy for them is misplaced," she said. "Humans serve because they owe their existence to our protection. They are not like us. Compassion is a weakness, Commander." Mira clenched her fists but kept her voice calm. "Weakness does not build loyalty. They will serve better if they are treated with respect." The counselors exchanged cold glances. For a moment, silence filled the air like a frozen mist. Then Saran stood, his robe flowing behind him like a wave of light. "Your words show rebellion of thought," he said. "Such defiance cannot go unpunished." Mira's stomach tightened, but she stood tall. She had known this moment would come. The Orans valued order above all else, and anyone who questioned it risked their position and honor. But she had not expected the punishment that followed. "The Council has decided," Saran continued. "You will be removed from your command. To correct your error and remind you of your place, you are to be bound in union to a human guard. You will share his quarters and his duties for 1 cycle. You will live as they do and understand the nature of those you defend." Mira's breath caught. A forced bond with a human guard was the lowest humiliation an Oran officer could face. It was meant to break pride, to make one realize how far above the Orans believed themselves to be. "This is unnecessary," Mira said quickly. "There are other forms of discipline." "The decision is final," Saran replied. "You will report to Human Division Barracks 7 by dawn." The guards beside her motioned for her to leave. Mira bowed stiffly, hiding the storm inside her. As she turned away, the cold eyes of the council followed her like silent judges. Outside the chamber, the city stretched below her in gleaming towers and floating bridges. Airships drifted in the distance, their engines humming softly. To most, it was a view of beauty. To Mira, it suddenly felt like a cage made of light. She walked through the corridors, her thoughts heavy. Humans were everywhere in the lower sectors, working as guards, miners, and cleaners. They were tolerated but never respected. Many Orans saw them as simple creatures, strong but slow, loyal but dull. Mira had seen otherwise. She had watched humans laugh when they had nothing, share food with strangers, and risk their lives for each other. There was a spirit in them she could not ignore. That was why she had spoken out. At dawn, she arrived at the barracks. The air was damp and smelled of metal and oil. Rows of small rooms lined the narrow corridor. The guard she passed paused to stare, clearly shocked to see an Oran officer among them. She ignored their looks and stopped at the last door. Inside stood a man, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a simple uniform with a small insignia on the chest. His eyes were gray and calm. He looked at her without fear or curiosity, just quiet attention. "You are Aaron," she said, reading the name from the small tablet in her hand. "Yes, Commander," he said respectfully. "Or I suppose I should say partner." She stiffened at the word. "This is not by my choice. It is punishment, nothing more. I expect you to follow my instructions and maintain distance unless ordered otherwise." Aaron nodded. "Understood." Mira set her small case on the table and looked around. The room was plain, with 2 beds, a metal table, and 1 narrow window showing the dull red horizon. There was nothing of comfort, no luxury as in Oran quarters. She sat on one bed and took a slow breath. "You do not seem surprised," she said after a moment. "I heard what happened," Aaron replied. "Rumors travel fast among humans. Some say you defended us. If that is true, then I do not think you deserve punishment. Mira turned her head toward him. You speak freely, he smiled faintly. Humans often do. It is one of the few freedoms we have. For a second, she had no answer. She had been trained to believe that humans should be quiet and obedient. But his calm honesty caught her off guard. He was not defiant, yet not submissive either. They worked together for the rest of the day. Mira followed the routine of the guards, helping check energy panels and patrol the perimeter. She found the work tiring but strangely grounding. Aaron worked beside her silently, moving with steady focus. When a young human dropped a tool and panicked, expecting punishment, Aaron only smiled and helped him pick it up. Mira watched, realizing how natural kindness seemed to him, while among her people it was seen as a weakness. As night fell, she sat on the edge of her bed, looking out the window. The lights of the city shimmered below like stars trapped in glass. Aaron was writing something in a small notebook. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Writing," he said. "It helps me remember the day." Humans keep written memories, yes, we call them journals. They help us make sense of what we feel. She thought about that. Feelings were not something Orcs were encouraged to explore. They were told to act by logic alone. Yet watching Aaron write, she felt a strange curiosity, almost envy. When he finished, he looked at her. "May I ask something?" "You may. Why did you speak for us in the council?" She hesitated. "Because I saw something in humans that I did not see in my own kind. You care for each other even when you gain nothing from it. You find joy in small things. I thought perhaps we had forgotten that." Aaron nodded slowly. "Maybe we can remind you." Mira looked away, unsure how to answer. The words stayed with her as she tried to rest. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the city outside. She had never felt so far from home, yet something in her heart began to shift. When dawn came again, she woke early. Aaron was already up, preparing their equipment. He greeted her with a polite nod and handed her a small piece of bread. "Breakfast," he said. She frowned. "You made this?" "Yes, it is simple, but it will give you strength." She hesitated, then took it. The taste was rough but warm. For a moment she felt a strange peace, as if the walls of pride around her had softened. In that small barracks room, far from the shining towers of Oran power, a quiet beginning had formed. Mira did not yet understand it, but she sensed that her punishment was not the end of her story. It was the start of something entirely new. And as she walked beside Aaron that morning, the rising sun painted the metal sky in gold. She did not look back toward the council tower. For the first time in her life, she wondered if the humans had always been closer to truth than the rulers who claimed to guide them. The sun rose slowly over the horizon of Oran City, its light spilling across the towers like a golden river. The air was clear and cool. Mira stood at the edge of the training field beside Oran, watching rows of human guards begin their morning drills. Their movements were strong but not perfect. They were uncoordinated at times, yet there was a rhythm to their effort that caught her attention. For years she had commanded Oran soldiers who moved in perfect unison like machines. They never smiled, never stumbled, never paused. But here among the humans there was laughter and chatter even during hard work. It seemed disorganized yet full of life. Aaron noticed her watching. "It is not as strict as what you are used to," he said. Mira folded her arms. "They lack discipline. Their steps are uneven, their lines are broken." Aaron nodded. "Maybe, but they do not give up. Even when tired, they keep going. That is how we learn." His tone was simple, not defensive. Mira found herself thinking about it for the rest of the drill. Afterward, Aaron handed her a small bottle of water. "You should drink," he said. "I am fine," she replied, but he simply placed it beside her on the bench. As the day continued, she joined Aaron in his regular patrol through the lower sectors. The humans working there greeted him with small smiles and nods. Some even waved. Mira noticed how easily he spoke to them, remembering their names, asking about their families, or joking in quiet tones. It was strange to her. Among Orans, conversation was formal and brief, but Aaron's manner made others relax. A young girl approached them holding a metal box filled with broken tools. "Guard Aaron, can you help fix this later?" she asked shyly. He smiled. "Of course, Lyra. Bring it to me after the evening shift." The girl nodded and ran off. Mira watched her go, confused. "Why do they come to you for help? You are not a mechanic." "Maybe because I listen," he said softly. That answer stayed with her all afternoon. Later, they returned to the barracks. Mira sat at the table, reviewing a list of patrol reports. Aaron entered carrying a small package. "I brought dinner," he said. Inside were pieces of bread and cooked roots from the market. Mira frowned. "You eat this every day, most humans do. Simple food, but it keeps us going." She took a small bite. The taste was plain but comforting. Aaron watched her carefully. "You do not have to eat it if you dislike it," he said. "It is fine," she replied. "Better than I expected." They ate in silence for a while. Mira noticed a faint hum of music from outside. A few humans had gathered near the barracks, singing quietly while resting after work. The song was low and steady, almost like a heartbeat. She had never heard such sounds before. "What is that?" she asked. "A song from Earth," Aaron said. "Humans sing to share stories or hope. It helps us remember who we are." Mira listened. The melody carried something she could not name. It was not logical or structured, but it made her chest feel warm. She looked out the window and saw the workers smiling, their faces tired but peaceful. "You find peace in this?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "It reminds us that no matter how far from home we go, our hearts still belong somewhere." For the first time, Mira felt a small ache inside her. She had always believed duty was enough to fill her life, but in that moment she wondered if something was missing. The next morning, the sky was gray, and rain began to fall. The energy shields over the sector flickered from the storm. Aaron and Mira were sent to check the outer gates for power damage. The rain came down hard, and the metal paths became slippery. "Stay close," Aaron said. Mira followed him through the wind. Lightning flashed above the towers, and the hum of the shields grew weaker. They reached the gate and began inspecting the control panels. Sparks flew from one of the conduits, and Aaron quickly grabbed a tool to fix it. "Careful," Mira said sharply. He smiled faintly. "Do not worry, I have done this before." When the storm intensified, they took shelter under a narrow platform. The sound of rain filled the space. Aaron removed his jacket and handed it to her. "You will get cold," she hesitated, then took it silently. The fabric was rough and smelled faintly of smoke and metal, yet it felt oddly comforting. "Why do you always help others?" she asked suddenly, "even when it gives you nothing in return?" Aaron thought for a moment. "Because it feels right," he said. "Helping someone does not make me weaker. It makes the world a little better, even if only for a moment." Mira looked at him. His words were simple, but they carried weight. In her world, every act was measured by rank and reward. Yet Aaron lived by something invisible, something she could not define. When the rain began to fade, they walked back to the barracks. The air smelled clean, and the streets shone with reflections of light. Children played in puddles, laughing without fear. Mira found herself smiling slightly at the sight. That evening, when they returned to their room, she saw Aaron repairing the broken box for the little girl. His hands moved carefully as he adjusted the wires. "You could ask one of the technicians to do that," she said. "I could," he replied, "but then she would have to wait. This way she can use it tomorrow." Mira sat beside him and watched. "You are patient," she said quietly. "My father used to say that patience is another kind of strength," Aaron said. "If you rush, you break things that could have been fixed." When the repair was done, he smiled with satisfaction. The box glowed faintly, its circuits alive again. Mira looked at it with mild admiration. "You learned this skill by yourself." "Yes. Humans have to learn many things to survive." She looked at him for a long time. The humans she had once thought of as inferior now seemed to carry a wisdom her people had forgotten. Later that night, she sat by the window again. Outside, the rain had stopped, and the city lights flickered across the wet streets. Aaron had fallen asleep, his journal open beside him. She leaned closer and saw a few lines written in neat handwriting. "Today I worked beside her. She is proud, but I think she has a kind heart. Maybe she does not see it yet." Mira felt her chest tighten. No one had spoken of her like that before. Not as a commander, not as a superior, but as a person. She closed the journal gently and looked out at the sky. For the first time in her life, she wondered what it meant to truly live with purpose. In the days that followed, their bond began to change in quiet ways. When she worked, Aaron no longer waited for orders. They moved together naturally, as if guided by understanding instead of rank. When she grew impatient, he reminded her to slow down. When he struggled with heavy tasks, she offered her help without thinking twice. Once, while repairing a damaged fence, Mira slipped and nearly fell. Aaron caught her arm, steadying her. She met his eyes and saw concern, not fear. For a brief moment, the world felt still. Then she stepped back quickly, pretending to focus on her work. That evening, she could not stop thinking about it. There had been no command, no duty in his action, only care. Each day, Mira learned more about the human way of life. It was simple, yet full of meaning. They celebrated small victories. They shared laughter in hardship. They built connections not from duty, but from choice. She began to see the truth that had always been hidden behind Oran pride. Strength was not only in power or control, it was also in kindness and the ability to feel and care. And as the days turned into weeks, Mira found herself waiting each morning for the sound of Oran's voice, the steady rhythm of his steps beside her, and the warmth that seemed to follow wherever he went. Something inside her had begun to change, though she did not yet understand it. What had started as punishment was slowly becoming something she looked forward to each day. The world outside remained the same. The towers still shone, the council still ruled. But inside that small barracks room, two lives were learning what it meant to share a single truth. And for Mira, the truth was simple. The human way was not weakness. It was strength born from heart. The sun shone brightly over Oran City, turning the towers into mirrors of gold. A light breeze moved through the lower sectors where Mira and Aaron began another day of patrol. Weeks had passed since her punishment began, but to her surprise, the days no longer felt like a burden. The rhythm of human life had started to pull her in, quiet but powerful. She no longer woke with anger or shame. Instead, she found herself thinking of the work ahead, of the people she had met, and of Aaron's calm voice that greeted her every morning. It was strange and unfamiliar, yet it felt right. That morning, they were assigned to inspect the outer storage units that held energy cells for the city's defense. The area was filled with workers, most of them human. As they walked through the rows, Mira noticed a group struggling to lift a damaged crate. "Careful," Aaron said, rushing forward to help. Without thinking, Mira followed. Together they lifted the crate and moved it to safety. The workers looked surprised to see an Oran officer helping them. One of them, a thin man with tired eyes, bowed slightly. "Thank you, Commander," he said. Mira shook her head. "No need for thanks. It was necessary." As they walked away, Aaron gave her a small smile. "You are changing," he said. She frowned. "What do you mean?" "Before, you would have ordered them to move the crate without touching it yourself. Now you help without being asked." Mira looked down at her gloves. "I did what was efficient," she said quickly. Aaron chuckled softly. "Maybe. But sometimes efficiency and kindness look the same." His words made her pause. She did not answer, but she thought about them for the rest of the day. In the evening, the workers gathered outside the barracks. They had built a small fire and were cooking food on metal plates. The scent of roasted roots filled the air. Someone was playing a small stringed instrument. The sound was soft and full of warmth. Mira stood at the doorway watching. Aaron joined her, holding 2 cups of warm drink. "You can sit with us," he said. "I am not one of you," she replied. "Maybe not by birth," he said, "but you work beside us now." "That is enough." She hesitated. The thought of sitting among humans like an equal felt strange. But the music and laughter drew her in. She stepped forward and sat near the fire. The humans welcomed her with quiet smiles, offering her food. One of them, an older woman with gentle eyes, began to tell a story about her family on Earth before they came to Oran space. Her words painted pictures of blue oceans, green forests, and open skies. Mira listened with fascination. She had seen records of Earth in the archives, but hearing it spoken by someone who had lived there was different. It sounded alive. When the story ended, there was a brief silence. Mira looked at the woman. "Do you miss it?" she asked. "Every day," the woman said. "But I also believe that home is where you build peace. Even here we can find small pieces of it." Mira thought about that long after the fire died down. She returned to her room and found Aran writing in his journal again. "Do you write every night?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "It helps me understand the day." She sat across from him. "What will you write tonight?" He smiled. "That you joined us at the fire." She shook her head. "That is not worth writing." "It is," he said gently. "Small steps matter." She looked at him for a moment, then nodded. "Maybe they do." The next morning brought a new task. Mira and Aaron were ordered to escort a group of human workers delivering supplies to the upper sectors. It was the first time she had returned to the higher levels since her punishment began. The air there was cleaner, the buildings brighter. But the faces of the Orcs were cold. They looked at the humans with distant eyes as if they were invisible. As they entered a checkpoint, an Orc officer named Terran stopped them. He was tall and stern, someone Mira had once known from her days in command. "Commander Mira," he said, his tone sharp. "I see your punishment has brought you to strange company." Mira stood straight. "I am fulfilling my assignment." Terran looked at Aaron with a sneer. It must be humbling to share quarters with one of them. Aaron said nothing, keeping his eyes forward. Mira felt a spark of anger rise inside her. "He is my partner for this duty," she said firmly. "He deserves the same respect as any soldier." Terran raised an eyebrow. "You defend them now, yes," she said. "Because they have earned it." The silence that followed was heavy. The workers stared in surprise. Terran's face hardened. "Be careful, Mira. Too much time among them may make you forget who you are." "I remember exactly who I am," she said. "And I choose to see worth where others choose to be blind." Without another word, she turned and led the group onward. When they were out of sight, Aaron looked at her. "You did not have to do that," he said quietly. "Yes, I did," she replied. "No one should be spoken to that way." He smiled faintly. "Thank you." Mira felt a warmth rise in her chest. It was not pride. It was something deeper, something she could not name. That night, back at the barracks, she sat by the window watching the city lights. Aaron joined her, carrying 2 cups of tea. They sat in silence for a long time. "Do you ever regret being human?" she asked suddenly. He shook his head. "No. We may not have the power of the Orcs, but we have our hearts. That is enough for me." She looked at him thoughtfully. "The Council believes emotions make us weak." "Then they have never felt what it means to care for others," he said softly. Mira turned away, feeling her throat tighten. She had spent her whole life believing strength was the absence of feeling, yet Aaron's quiet confidence made her question everything she had been taught. As days passed, the barrier between them grew thinner. They worked together with an ease that surprised her. When she was tired, Aaron noticed before she spoke. When he struggled, she helped without hesitation. One afternoon, they found themselves repairing a damaged generator outside the city walls. The sun was hot and the air shimmered. Mira wiped sweat from her forehead and looked at Aaron, who was kneeling beside the panel. His hands were steady, his face focused. "You work without complaint," she said. He smiled. "Complaining does not make the work easier." She laughed softly, surprising herself. It had been years since she had laughed like that. Aaron looked up, his eyes bright. "You should do that more often," he said. "Do what?" "Laugh, it suits you." She looked away quickly, feeling a warmth on her face. "You speak too freely," she said, though her tone held no anger. "Maybe," he said, "but truth should be spoken." When the generator was fixed, they sat for a moment under the shade of a large metal frame. The wind carried the faint scent of grass from the nearby plains. For a while, neither spoke. Mira thought about the days that had passed, the lessons she had learned, and the strange peace she now felt. The walls around her heart, built through years of duty and discipline, were starting to break. That night she dreamed of Earth. She saw wide oceans, forests of green, and skies full of stars. When she woke, she felt tears on her cheeks. It was a feeling she did not understand, but it did not frighten her. In the morning, she found Aaron already awake, preparing for another day. He looked at her and smiled. "You look different today," he said. "Do I?" "Yes, you look free." She did not answer, but his words stayed with her. As they walked through the city that day, Mira noticed the humans around her. She saw how they greeted her with quiet respect now, how their eyes held trust instead of fear. She realized that her small actions had begun to change something more than herself. And deep inside, she knew that her punishment was no longer a mark of shame. It was a door that had led her into a truth she never expected to find. The walls that once kept her apart from the world were breaking. And behind them she found not weakness but strength born from understanding. And beside her walked the man who had shown her the meaning of that strength. Morning came softly over the city of Auran. The sky was painted in shades of silver and blue, and the air carried a quiet calm. Mira stood on the balcony outside the barracks, watching the first light touch the towers in the distance. The warmth of the sun reached her face, but her thoughts were far away. So much had changed inside her heart. What had begun as punishment had become something entirely different. She had learned patience, compassion, and understanding from the humans, and from Aaron most of all. The once sharp line between their worlds had started to fade, replaced by respect and a quiet bond that neither of them could deny. Aaron joined her, holding 2 cups of tea. He handed one to her with a small smile. "You are awake early again," he said. "I could not sleep," she admitted. "My mind was restless. Thinking about the council," she nodded. "They do not like what they see in me now. I have heard whispers among the officers. They think I have forgotten my place." Aaron looked at her calmly. "Have you?" Mira turned to face him. "Maybe I have forgotten the place they gave me, but I have found something better." He said nothing more, but his eyes were warm with quiet pride. Later that morning, Mira and Aaron were called to the central office of the human sector. The council had sent new orders. The human work groups were to be reduced and several families were to be moved to the outer colonies to work in harsh conditions. The news brought fear and anger among the workers. Mira read the message twice, her heart tightening with every line. "This is wrong," she said softly. "They are treating them like cargo, not people." Aaron placed his hand on the table. "We can try to speak to them. Maybe if they hear it from you, they will listen." Mira hesitated. "The council listens only to power and rank. I have neither now." "You still have a voice," Aaron said, "and that voice has changed more hearts than you know." His faith in her gave her strength. That evening she gathered the human workers in the main hall. The air was thick with worry. Faces looked up at her, full of questions and fear. Mira stood before them, her posture straight but her eyes soft. "I know you have heard the new order," she began. "I cannot promise to stop it, but I will not stay silent. You have worked, built, and served with more heart than any army I have ever led. You deserve to be treated as living beings, not as tools. I will go before the council and speak for you." The hall went quiet. Some humans looked at each other with disbelief, others with hope. One young man stepped forward. "They will punish you," he said. "You could lose everything." Mira looked at him and smiled faintly. "Then I will lose it for the right reason." When she turned to leave, Aaron followed. "I will go with you," he said. The next day they made their way to the upper sector. The air there was cooler and the lights brighter, but Mira felt a weight pressing on her chest. She knew what she was about to do could end her life in the service, but she no longer feared it. They entered the council chamber. The tall glass walls shimmered, and the counselors sat high above her as before. Seran, the elder who had sentenced her months ago, looked down with unreadable eyes. "Mira of Oran," he said, "you stand before us once again. Why have you come?" "I come to speak of the humans," she said firmly. "The new relocation order is unjust. It will break families and destroy lives. They have earned better than this." Saran's expression hardened. "You forget your place, Commander. Your punishment was meant to teach you humility, not rebellion." "I have learned humility," Mira said, "but I have also learned truth. Humans are not weak. They are strong in ways we have forgotten. They build, they care, they forgive. We claim to be advanced, yet we do not understand the simplest power of kindness." Murmurs filled the chamber. One counselor leaned forward. "You speak as if they are equal to us," he said sharply. "They are," Mira answered. "They may not have our science or our technology, but their hearts hold a strength that no machine can create." Saran stood slowly. His voice echoed through the hall. "You would place humans beside us in rank and worth." "Yes," she said clearly, "because worth is not measured by power. It is measured by how we treat those with less." The silence that followed was deep and heavy. Then Saran turned to the guards. "Remove her," he said coldly. Aaron stepped forward. "She speaks truth," he said. "If you cannot see it, then you are blind to what humanity has given this world." Gasps filled the room. A human guard speaking before the council was unheard of. Mira turned to him, her eyes wide with fear for him. But Aaron's face was calm, his voice steady. "You can take away rank and title," he said, "but you cannot take away the right to feel, to care, or to love. Those are the things that make us alive." The counselors were speechless. No one had ever spoken to them in such a way. Saran raised his hand. "Enough. Leave this chamber at once. Both of you." Mira and Aaron walked out together. When the doors closed behind them, she felt a rush of relief and fear all at once. "They will come for us," she said softly. "Maybe," Aaron replied, "but you spoke your truth. That is what matters." That night, the humans gathered again in the hall. They had heard what had happened. Mira tried to quiet them, but they surrounded her with gratitude. Some wept, others smiled through tears. "You gave us hope," one man said. "For the first time, we feel seen." Mira looked around at their faces. She felt her heart swell with pride and sorrow. "Hope is only the beginning," she said. "You must continue to stand for yourselves with peace, not anger." Aaron stood beside her, his eyes steady. "She is right. Change begins when hearts unite." Word of her speech spread quickly through the city. Some Orans began to question the council's ways. Others whispered in secret that Mira was right, that the humans were not lesser beings but reflections of what the Orans had once been. Days passed, and the council did not summon her again. Instead, they sent new guards to watch the human sector. The tension grew, but so did the quiet strength among the people. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the city, Mira and Aaron stood on the balcony. The lights of the city glimmered below like a sea of stars. "You risked everything today," Aaron said. "So did you," she replied. "But I have no regret." He looked at her for a long moment. "You have changed more than you know," he said softly. "Maybe," she said, "but it is you who showed me how." The night air was cool. They stood side by side, silent yet connected by something stronger than words. In the days that followed, Mira began to notice a shift in the air. Some Orans came quietly to the human sector to offer supplies or assistance. A few even stayed to listen to their songs. The gap between the two races had begun to shrink just a little. One afternoon, a message arrived from Mira. It was sealed with the mark of the council. She opened it carefully. The words were brief. "Your actions have stirred unrest. You will report for reassessment." Aaron looked at her as she folded the paper. "You are going back to them again." "Yes," she said calmly. "They want to remind me of their power." "But I will remind them of something greater." "What is that?" "That hearts cannot be controlled by fear." Aaron smiled faintly. "Then you are ready." That night before she rested, Mira looked at the stars. She felt both fear and peace. Whatever awaited her, she knew she would face it with truth. For the first time, she understood what real courage was. It was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. And in her heart, she knew that no matter what the council decided, the seed of change had already been planted. The humans believed again in their worth. The Orans had begun to question their pride. The rebellion had not come with weapons or destruction. It had come with compassion, with words, and with courage born from love. As Mira closed her eyes, the future of two worlds hung in the balance. Yet she felt no regret. Whatever came next, she would face it not as a punished officer, but as a voice for something greater than herself. And when the morning light touched her face once more, she was ready to stand before the world as proof that even a single heart, once closed, could open wide enough to change everything. The morning sky over Oran City was pale and calm, the kind of stillness that came before great change. Mira stood outside the council tower, her heart steady despite the uncertainty ahead. The message from the council had summoned her for reassessment, a word that could mean anything in their cold language. Aaron stood beside her, silent but firm, his presence like a quiet shield. "You do not have to face them alone," he said softly. "I began this path," Mira replied. "I must see it through." She looked at him, her eyes full of gratitude. "Whatever happens, know that I am thankful for you. You showed me the truth about what it means to live." Aaron smiled gently. "And you showed me that change is possible even in the hardest hearts." The great doors of the council tower opened, and Mira walked inside. The air was cool and bright, the walls glowing faintly with silver light. The chamber looked the same as before, but she no longer felt small within it. She felt whole. The councilors sat in their high seats, their robes shimmering with the light of authority. Saren was at the center, his gaze sharp but unreadable. "Mira of Oran," he said, "you have been called here to account for your recent actions. Your defiance has inspired unrest." "Explain yourself," Mira stepped forward. Her voice was calm, but her words carried strength. "I spoke truth. I have seen the strength of the humans with my own eyes. They work, they build, and they care for one another. They may be different from us, but they are not lesser. If calling for fairness is defiance, then I will not deny it." A counselor to the right leaned forward. "You risk the order of our society. You place emotion above logic." "Emotion and logic are not enemies," Mira replied. Without compassion, logic becomes cruelty. Without reason, compassion becomes blindness. We need both. The council chamber grew silent. Her words hung in the air like a spark waiting to catch. Another voice spoke, softer this time. You were given a punishment meant to humble you. Do you now claim it has made you wiser? Mira met the speaker's eyes. Yes, I was sent to learn humility. Instead, I learned humanity, and I will not unlearn it. A ripple of quiet conversation passed among the counselors. Some faces showed anger, but others seemed thoughtful. Saran remained silent for a long moment before he finally spoke. You believe the humans are equal to us? I do, she said. Not by blood, but by spirit. We have built cities of light and silence, but they have built hearts that shine brighter. We should not rule them. We should stand beside them. The words echoed through the hall. For a long time, no one spoke. Finally, Saran stood. Your time among them has changed you beyond return. You no longer serve the council. Mira bowed her head slightly. Then I serve truth. Saran hesitated. He had expected fear, anger, or tears, but there was none. Only peace in her eyes. He turned to the other counselors. The order will decide her fate. Before he could finish, the doors at the end of the chamber opened. A group of humans and several young Oran officers entered quietly. Among them was Aaron. He carried no weapon, no anger, only determination. Counselors, he said respectfully, I ask permission to speak. Saran frowned. This chamber is not open to your kind. Perhaps it should be, Aaron said calmly. Because your decisions do not affect only Orans. They affect us all. We came here not to fight, but to ask for understanding. Mira turned to him, surprise and pride shining in her eyes. He continued. You call her defiant, but she has done what none of you have. She listened. She saw us not as servants, but as people. That is what leadership should be. The counselors murmured again. One of them, the youngest, rose slowly. Perhaps we have been blind. Perhaps there is wisdom in what they say. Saran's expression shifted. You would change centuries of law for the words of a human and a fallen commander. The young counselor met his gaze. I would change anything that has lost its purpose. Power without compassion destroys itself. The hall filled with whispers. The sound grew louder until it felt like the whole building was breathing. Saran raised his hand and silence returned. He looked at Mira. What is it that you truly want? Mira took a deep breath. I want peace built on respect, not fear. I want the humans to live as equals, free to choose their paths. And I want our people to remember what it means to care. Her words carried no anger, only truth. Saran studied her face for a long time. At last he said quietly, Leave this place, Mira, go back to your people. We will consider what has been said. She bowed once and turned to go. Aaron followed. The chamber doors closed behind them, and for the first time in many years, the halls of the council were filled not with command but with thought. Outside, the city stretched beneath them like a sea of glass and light. The air felt different, lighter somehow. Mira stood at the balcony overlooking the lower sectors where the humans lived. She saw them moving through the streets, working, talking, and smiling. Do you think they will change? Aaron asked quietly. I do not know, she said. But the first step has been taken. Change always begins with a voice, he nodded. And sometimes that voice comes from where no one expects it. They walked back through the streets together. Everywhere they went, humans and Orans alike greeted them. Word of her speech had already spread. Some bowed, others smiled. For the first time, there was no division in the eyes that met theirs. In the following weeks, the council began to act. The relocation order was withdrawn. Humans were given the right to speak in public gatherings and to live in the city sectors without restriction. It was only the beginning, but it was enough to bring hope. Mira continued to work among the people, not as a commander but as a bridge. She helped Orans and humans work together on new projects. She trained young officers to lead with empathy instead of fear. Aaron stayed by her side, guiding the human workers with his quiet strength. One evening, as the sun set behind the towers, Mira stood on a hill overlooking the city. The light of the sunset turned everything gold. She felt peace settle inside her, gentle and full. Aaron joined her, carrying 2 cups of tea as always. Do you remember the day we first met? He asked. Yes, she said. I remember thinking that this was the worst punishment I could receive. And now I know it was the greatest gift. They stood together, watching as lights flickered across the city. For the first time in Oran history, humans and Orans worked side by side. Laughter echoed from the streets and songs filled the air. It was a new sound, a new beginning. Mira turned to Aaron. The council may never thank us, but that does not matter. What matters is that people can look at each other without fear. Aaron smiled. That is all I ever wanted. As night fell, stars began to appear. Mira looked up at them and felt something deep within her. She realized that peace was not born in great victories, but in small choices made with courage. The woman who had once stood cold and proud, now stood humble and strong. Her punishment had not broken her. It had awakened her. In time, her name became a symbol across both races. Songs were written about the day an Oran commander and a human guard stood together and changed the course of two worlds. But for Mira and Aaron, it was never about glory. It was about understanding, kindness, and the power of hearts that refused to stay divided. On a quiet morning, as the first light of dawn touched the city once more, Mira whispered to herself, "The heart learns what no law can teach." Beside her, Aaron looked out at the horizon. The sun rose higher, spreading gold across the land. The city of Oran was no longer just a place of glass and order. It had become a home where two kinds of people could live as one. And for Mira, that sunrise was more than light. It was a promise. The promise of a new dawn,